first and foremost, new card, an entirely new archetype released in Alliance Insight. So let us see what exactly it's got in store. It is called Regenesis. Regenesis is what the archetype is called. It is a couple of different cards, I think. Yeah, we've got a bunch, actually. Okay. Regenesis Warrior or Regenesis Warrior Bereshit. Level 7 Fire Warrior effect monster, 25/25. You can only special summon with the first effect of this card's name once per turn. You can only use the second and third effect of this card's name each once per turn. If a monster with 2500 original attack or defense is on the field, you can special summon this card from your hand. Quick effect, you can tribute this card, then target a monster your opponent controls, return it to the hand. During your opponent's end phase, if this card's in your graveyard because it was sent there this turn, you can add it to your hand. Interesting. That is not a bad card right at the bat. It reminds me a little bit of like a Pankratops-esque effect, right? Like if I guess it depends how, if there's a card on end boards that has 2500 attack or defense, but like if there is, then this can be a really easy thing to summon. So yeah, Fire Warrior, yeah. Quick effect, bounce, and then if you do it on the opponent's turn, you even get to add it back. Not bad. Regenesis Sage Schmidt. Level 7 Water Spellcaster, 25/25. Okay, seems to be their thing. Makes sense. The entire, I'm guessing the entire archetype is 25/25. All level 7 so far. You can only special summon with the first effect once per turn. You can only use the second and third once per turn. If a monster with 25 attack or the... Okay, that seems to be the trait. I can already tell you right off the bat, all of them are level 7, and all of them require 2500 to be on the board to special summon themselves. This is 100% Kashtira Unicorn material, all right? Level 7 and 2500, and you just special summon it out. If this deck is built around this entire thing, you're gonna play a Kashtira package in this. When your opponent activates a card or effect, quick effect, you can send one other Regenesis card from your hand or face-up field to the graveyard, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. Send one other Regenesis card. Okay. During your opponent's end phase, if this card's in your grave because it was sent there this turn, you can add it to your hand. Okay, so that seems to be something they also all have. That is an Omni Negate. The cool thing, quote unquote, about this card was that you contribute itself, and then if you do that on the opponent's turn, it'll add itself back to the hand. This one, you're sending a different card, so it won't immediately like go to the grave and add itself back, but that's probably solid. I don't like the fact that it's an Omni Negate, of course, but it's powerful. Regenesis Dragon Vayikra, level 8 win. Oh, this one's level 8. Okay, so they're not all level 7. Well, okay. You can only special summon with the first effect once per turn. Okay, I think we can skip this part. They all seem to have a 1, 2, 3 with that setup. If a monster is 25, yep. Quick effect, you contribute this card, target a spell trap your opponent controls, banish it. Okay. During your opponent's end phase, if this card's in... Okay, I like this concept. I like this concept. We can special summon some 2500 bodies that all have a quick effect to do one thing, and then they all have grind game by going back into your hand in the opponent's end phase. All right. Regenesis Archfiend Bemidbar, level 8 Fiend, 25/25. You can only special summon. Special summon. Oh, this one's different. Oh, this one's good. You can special summon this card from your hand by revealing a monster in your hand with 2500 attack or defense. If this card is normal or specialed, you can add a Regenesis card from your deck or banishment to your hand except itself. During your opponent's end phase, if it's in the graveyard center this turn, you can add it to your hand. This is very good, because what I was like looking at here with these guys is like, okay, well, they all have nice effects. They're all solid cards, but none of them gets you going, right? That's why I was thinking of Kashtira Unicorn. I'm like, okay, the problem with this is, where does the first one come from? Where does the first one come from? Because all of them require one on the board. Now, here's your answer in the archetype, right? You probably from what I'm seeing so far, you would still play Kashtira Unicorn in this unless there's another card that locks you. But this is the one that gets you started, and it even adds any of the other cards. That's a pretty good one. And then we have Regenesis God Deuteronomion, level 10 Light Illusion. Oh no, it's gonna be an illusion that can't be destroyed by battle. If cannot be normal summon or set, must be special summoned from your hand by banishing a face-up monster you control with 2500 original attack and defense. Wait, do they all say attack and defense? No, those are say or. Okay, so I was not yapping. Unicorn actually works. Okay, this one says and though. 25 original attack and defense. You can only special summon once per turn. This way, if this card is special summoned, you can set a Regenesis spell trap from your deck. Gains 2500 attack during the battle phase only. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage. Okay. That's, once again, not a starter card. Is an extender. But is still not terrible. Gives you, it depends on the quality of the spell traps. The spell card is just called Regenesis, alright? Plain and simple. Just Regenesis, normal spell card. You can only use the first and second effect each once per turn. Take a Regenesis monster from your deck and either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard, or if you control a Regenesis monster, you can add a monster with 2500 attack and defense from your deck to your hand instead. Okay, now you're gonna have to tell me right at the bat. I'm sure there's someone here who already knows what kind of crazy things you can do with that. Is there any crazy tech card you can add in? There are no good ones. Okay. All right, sure. If this card is in your graveyard, except the turn it was sent there, you can banish it, then target a Regenesis monster in your grave special summon. All right, this card is obviously phenomenal. It's a Rhoda. It's a Rhoda with a secondary effect for follow-up. That is pretty damn strong. Torah Regenesis, quick play spell card. You can only use the first and second effect of this card's name each once per turn. Your opponent's special summon, you cannot special summon from the extra deck until the end of the next turn after this card resolves. Also special a Regenesis monster from your deck, but send it to the graveyard during your opponent's end phase. During your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the grave, you can banish this card from your grave, then target one of your banished Regenesis monsters, special summon it. I quite like this one. In general, this seems to be... let's read the last one before I make any assumptions, just for completion's sake. Let's read the trap before we yap. Regenesis Birth, continuous trap card. You can only use the first and second once per turn, and only once that turn. Oh, you can only use one of the first and second and only once. Okay. You can send a Regenesis monster from your deck to the grave, then target a face-up monster your opponent controls, change it to face-down defense position. Now, this is especially powerful considering how all of the other Regenesis monsters, or the first ones, they all have this effect to add themselves back to your hand in the opponent's end phase. So not only do you get a disruption from this, you also get a resource for next turn. During your opponent's turn, you can send this face-up card from your spell and trap zone to the graveyard, special summon as many Regenesis monsters with different names as possible from your hand, grave, or banishment, but send them to the graveyard during the... Okay, the second effect is broken. You definitely... This is one of those trap cards where it sucks that it's a trap card, but I think this card is good enough that in this deck, you would play it. You would play it because you're going to summon a bunch of Regenesis monsters on your opponent's turn, and they all have quick effects. Right? It's like, if you have a bunch of these in your graveyard, you're going to be able to, like, this is a bounce, this is a negate, this is a, what was it, spell trap banish, and this is a search. Right? That is a ridiculously good effect on your opponent's turn. And if you don't have access to as many, well, you just use the first effect, right? Just a Book of Moon plus a set. And because they're all sent to the graveyard during the end phase, you get them all back to the graveyard. Okay, so the theme of this deck seems to be a very main deck focused approach, which is not super common in Yu-Gi-Oh! These days. You know, most decks rely on their boss monsters to be in the extra deck, turning like all of the main deck cards are more so like the engine, and the extra deck is kind of what you're trying to end on. With Regenesis, it seems like what they want you to do is to actually play with your main deck boss monsters, right? And in order for you to do that, they're giving you a bunch of monsters that you are incentivized to keep on the field. You're not incentivized to link off or Xyz summon with a card that gives you an Omni Negate or a card that is a bounce on the opponent's turn. That kind of stuff, right? Like, so you are incentivized to not use your extra deck, of course, further strengthened by the fact that one of the better cards in this deck does lock you from your extra deck for multiple turns, right? Like, this one is, this is a very good card for this deck. It's an emergency teleport, which is especially good considering that, like, you need a way to summon your first 2500 attack monster, and then you are good to go, right? But you are locked from your extra deck. What you get in exchange for kind of playing a deck that doesn't want to go into its extra deck much is you're getting a ridiculously good grind game, right? Like, you're getting Rhoda with a secondary effect for follow-up, you're getting an emergency teleport with a secondary effect for follow-up, you're getting a trap card which helps you set up and gives you insane follow-up, and the entire archetype is filled with cards that are good with follow-up because they all go back into your hand during the opponent's end phase. This is a sort of playstyle that I could really appreciate this, you know, like it could be a solid deck. Of course, I think you would be incentivized to pair it with some other archetypes that make it easier to get 2500 attack bodies onto your field, because as it stands right now, the first three here are not starters on their own. They can only be extenders. So you would have to open this one, the Rhoda, the Regenesis normal spell, or the quick play spell. If you don't open one of these 9 cards, you won't be able to summon out your other Regenesis monsters. So cards that I can think of is I can think of Kashtira Unicorn is the obvious answer, I think, especially because, and this is a small little nuance, these guys say original attack, so you can even use Kashtira with the field spell. Like, if you're activating Wraith Soth and then summon Unicorn, that'll still count as 2500 original attack. And 2500 in general is a pretty common stat, so like I'm pretty sure you have a lot of choices. You could play Bestials, right, which would help you a lot. You can add other things. Does this card say for the rest of this turn? You cannot special summon until the end of the next turn after this card resolves. Yeah, okay, so you could also use like a normal summon engine, because they don't need their normal summon. You could use a normal summon engine that produces a 2500 extra deck monster. I'm not sure exactly which one that would be. You guys are saying Alistair. I don't know if that would be the one, but theoretically you're correct. Yeah, you could use Alistair to make a Mechaba, and that's 2500, and then you can summon all your other things. What I'm saying is, it seems like a pretty good secondary engine. I don't think from the cards right here you would be building a pure Regenesis deck. I think they would slot into different decks to add some grind game to it. But from the first wave, this looks powerful to me. Like, this is one of those instances where every single one of these cards is actually good. There's no card in here that I'm like, yeah, this sucks, you're not going to play this. These are all good cards, I feel like. Even the trap card. And they offer pretty good grind game, and they offer interruption on the opponent's turn. And really, what more can you ask for like main deck monsters that are basically free special summons, right? Because that's a pretty good feature. I do like that they're making cards that do incentivize you to not go into your extra deck as much, right? Because this offers you more play under cards like Molcharmi Fuvalos, for example. Like, if you add this engine to your deck is going to get better into Molcharmi Fuvalos, for example. And in general, just like driving people into playing more with their main deck and less with just spamming extra deck monsters, I think is a good thing. I think it's a promising archetype. Not broken right off the thing, but it's pretty good. The only thing I don't like, of course, is how they just have a very generic Omni Negate. But I suppose, you know, Duo Drive has 2500 attack, Ryziel Regenesis. It's pretty cool that you can right off the bat come up with a lot of different strategies to potentially slot these cards in. At least it requires you to have archetype cards for the negate. Yeah, This card itself, if you just draw it, will not have a negate. You need to get rid of another Regenesis card in order to use it. At least there's a reasonable cost attached to it, even though the effect is still very strong. Skull Guardian is 2500 defense, Voiceless Regenesis. Borger has 2500. I mean, 2500 is a very common stat. You could theoretically put these in a lot of decks. Where they actually end up being good is something that remains to be seen. But they are good enough to see play, I think. The summoning condition can be fulfilled by opponent's monsters. Yes, they could be even better going second, depending on what deck your opponent is playing. But you're not going to want to build your deck around that, hoping your opponent is going to give you a starter, essentially. You're still going to have to make sure that your deck is good enough at producing a 2500 attack monster and not just rely on your opponent, right? Because yes, against some decks, they're going to have it, but not always. Also, it depends on whether you want to go first or second. 2500 Kaiju. Is there a Kaiju with 2500? You could Lava Golem. I think Lava Golem has 2500 defense. This looks like a pretty good deck to put Lava Golem in your side deck. Maybe you play a normal summon in your main deck, and then you side out your normal summon going second, and you side in Lava Golems, and then you like just make your opponent makes a board, and you go like, okay, here's your Lava Golem, and then you summon your Regenesis monsters. That's cool things. Radion and Kumungus. Yeah, okay. We don't have to go through every single monster with 2500 attack or defense now, because there's a lot of them, but I think, to me, this is a good sign when an archetype comes out that immediately you have a bunch of ideas of where you could put it, and it really makes you think, because the cards are good enough that you want to play them, but they're not broken enough that you know that you have to play them in everything for sure. Because there's a realistic possibility that these cards end up being that you try them and you think like, hey, no, I prefer pure. They're not like super broken. I like this a lot. This is a well-designed archetype for now, in my opinion. It looks fine. The Omni Negate, I'm not the biggest fan of. Outside of that, I think it's a pretty intriguing design. I like it.